I'm an immigrant, so I'm a naturalized citizen. So for me, voting is very important because I was born in a communist country. And so therefore, our rights were pretty much trampled on. I became very passionate about voter protection about 10 years ago and started volunteering as I could. I was either a poll watcher outside or I was a legal observer inside, where you stayed while they were counting the votes, like from the moment they opened till the moment they closed. So I'm very passionate about voting rights and supporting the rights of everyone to have access to the polls. And I consider myself a civil rights attorney and advocate. I've done a lot of work in the civil rights arena since I started practicing law. And before that, I was a special education teacher. So therein lies the intersection between civil rights and disability rights, because as a teacher, you're always advocating for the rights of your students so they can get the services that they deserve. I started my kids since they were little by actually taking them with me when I went to vote. And so they just get used to, from the time that they're cognizant of what's going on, they get used to understanding that we're voting, whether it was a presidential election or a local election. And sometimes I would bring my niece and nephew also, one on each hip and then two walking, holding hands together. But I would take them and we got used to it. And the community that I lived in, although no two people thought the same, everyone in that community was really invested in the electoral process. And so we voted at the town center. So there was always a long line, everybody came with their kids, and it would kind of be a neighborly thing to do. It's a nonpartisan issue, civic engagement, right? We all have a right to be engaged. We all should be engaged. We don't have that right where I was born, and so we need to exercise that right. Yep. In Cuba, you don't have a choice.
Yep.
The first day of early voting, that Saturday morning, as soon as they opened, I was outside, ready to go. There was no line. And it was just, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. The Disability Law Center actually does voting rights work, specifically ensuring that everyone has the ability to vote independently and privately at the polls. And obviously that's been taken up a notch this year with making sure that for those that are voting from home, that they also have the ability to vote independent and privately without the help of anyone printing something for them, marking it for them, especially if the person is visually impaired or blind. During every election, the Disability Law Center actually will go out to look at the polling sites, survey them, to make sure that they're accessible, not only the outside, the parking lot, the entrance to the building, but then once you come in, are the handles with the appropriate levers so that people can open? There enough clearance for a wheelchair to turn around? And does everyone have the AutoMark machine out? And is it working? The AutoMark machine will actually read the ballot to the voter that's in front of the machine. And you have the ability to put on the headphones and it'll read the ballot to you. You can then direct the machine on how to mark the ballot for you. Is there a separate entrance for folks in a wheelchair or folks who may be using some sort of walking assistance that they can use, where it's an automatic door opener? Does the door remain unlocked? Is it accessible from the street? There were a couple of locations that I went to where it was street parking. That makes it really difficult, because the other thing you're looking at is it the same distance of travel for someone with a disability versus someone without a disability? So in a location where they've always had the handicap parking towards the back of the building, but now for this early voting, everybody's got to come in through the front, then the person with a disability may be required to walk a longer distance. Additional point that was needed when we went out is that for early voting, you had like one polling site for that area. And so it needed to be big enough to allow separation, right? And to be able to comport with the CDC requirements. So at times, the location was not the regular voting location. Where are the ballot drop-off boxes? Because that's another thing that we've never really had to look for, but are they also accessible? So in some places, they weren't marked correctly where I went. And so you kind of had to get up really close to the building because it looked like a typical mailbox in the smaller towns where you can drop it off. Other towns had big boxes that were definitely marked, drop-offs. Because it's not an I gotcha. It's more of like, hey, I'm here to help, and I always say, I'm just giving a suggestion, but I think that this would work best. And 99% of the time, folks will step up and say, you're right, let me just change it right now. We continue to do that work for every election, whether it's local, state, or federal. But this year, we've been even more involved with ensuring that everyone with a disability, if they so choose to vote from home, can do so independently and privately. It seems like it's been going on all year, because if we weren't physically at the polls, we were working behind the scenes to ensure that the language that was being put in place for vote by mail was conducive to the needs of people with disabilities and actually did not violate the ADA. And then whatever procedures were put in place were also compliant with ADA requirements. Don't we all have a right to vote independently and privately? And so someone with a disability shouldn't have less of a right than someone without a disability. When you pull up to your polling site, just take it all in. And if there is parking, what they call handicap parking, is it near the front door? Are there clear signs telling you where to go to enter if you do have a handicap? Like if you're in a wheelchair, or if you need assistance to get into the building, maybe you use a walker or a cane. Is the distance really far from where a ramp is for someone who has to park out on the street or in the parking lot? Because I think it's important just to raise that awareness. Be cognizant of the fact that other people might be in line that may have problems standing for too long, that need to rest. If you have a chair, offer them the chair if it looks like someone's tired, or, offer to let someone know inside that they need assistance so someone can come out and assist them, or assist them yourself. Never force yourself to assist anyone. You just, pose the question, and if they want to, then by all means help. Individuals with disability are not monolithic. And that's the other thing we need to keep in mind. And sometimes the person may have a disability and may also be, English is a second language for them. And then maybe they also need an interpreter. It's about empathy. It's about caring for your neighbor. I think that's the bottom line. If we did that for everybody, I think we'd be in a better space.